We begin today at the Mishnah towards the bottom of Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis. Zok Teilige Mishnah Gimel Achen Nesuin Gimel Nachriyos. 3 brothers that are married to 3 wives unrelated to one another. Umeis Echad Mehen. And one of these brothers passed away. Va'asa ba Hasheni Maimer. The second brother came along, did not do Yibum or Chalitza, but what he did is Maimer. What's Maimer? It's a Kedushim B'Derabanan. And then what happened? Umeis. And now this brother that did Maimer, and he was married to one wife fully, and to the other wife, this one that he did Maimer for, he's married to her sort of partially, only Midrabanan. So what happens? Hare Eilu Cheltzais V'loi Misyabmois. So both of his wives, you could only do Chalitza for them and not Yibum for them. Why is this? So it starts with the wife that you're doing Chalitza for. Again, the wife that you did Maimer for. Shenamar, the pasuk says, Umeis Echad Mehen Yevamos Yava Yaleha, that if one of the brothers die, so now another brother has to do Yibum. So what do you learn from this pasuk where it says Echad Mehen? Misha Allah Zikas Yavam Echad. If there's only the Zikah, if there's only one Yavam that is the source and the reason for this Yibum, there the mitzvah of Yibum applies. So if there's one brother that dies, and now you have to do Yibum for this wife of this one brother, then there's a mitzvah. But V'loi Sha'aleh Zikas Beis Yavamin. But not over here in this case where there's a zika of 2 Yevamin. So over here, as Rashi explains, what happens is when you do Maimer for this wife that was previously your brother's wife, so now because the Maimer is only Midrabanan, so therefore Minat Torah, this Maimer did not take effect yet. So whose Yavam is she? She's still the Yavam of the first brother. But on the other hand, there is a Kedushim Midrabanan, and the Kedushim Midrabanan creates a connection to the second brother. So now when the second brother passes away, this wife is partially a Zikah from the first brother, and partially a Zikah from the second brother. So therefore, there's a Yibum that's connected to 2 brothers. So the point that the Tanna Kama is saying here is that Maimer creates a partial marriage. So now you can't do Yibum anymore. Rab Shimon says, Miyavim le'ezeh sheyirtzeh. No, you could do Yibum to either one of these wives, whichever one you would want, and then v'chaylitz l'shniyah, and then you'll do chalitza for the second one. So the point that Rab Shimon is saying is, we had this earlier in the Masechta, Rab Shimon says that when you look at Maimer, it's not a partial marriage. Maimer is a kedushin midrabanan. So he says Maimer is a kedushin which we consider to be a suffix. Because it's a kedushin midrabanan, so it's a suffix what the status of this wife is. So Maman of Shechi says, either she's the wife of the second husband that just married her with Maimer, or she's still considered to be the Yevama from the first brother, if this marriage did not take effect. On the tzad that she's the Yevama of the first brother, so then now you have 2 Yevamas over here. One Yevama from the first brother, and now the second brother died, you have a Yevama from the second brother. If that would be true, you could do Yibum for both of the wives, not a problem. Each one is coming from another brother. But it could be, there's a tzad to say that the Maimer did take effect. And if so, this one, the wife that was once from the previous brother is now the wife of the second brother. So therefore you have to do Yibum only for one of these wives. So therefore, you don't need Chalitza for the second one. What's the halach if you have 2 of one brother? You only need Yibum for one. So therefore you have to do Yibum for one. You can't do Yibum for both, because maybe they're both from the same brother, and therefore you do Yibum for one and Chalitza for the other. That's Rab Shimon. Fragt the Gemara, v'i zikas beis Yevamin da'iraisa. Now it seems from the Mishnah that this halacha, that there's no mitzvah of Yibum when you have the Yevamim coming from 2 brothers. So it's not Torah, a limit from the pasuk. If so, Chalitza nami loy tebai. So you shouldn't need any chalitza for the second wife over here. Because over here it's telling you that when you have a zika from 2 Yevamim, there's no mitzvah of Yibum b'chlal. So there's no mitzvah, no Yibum, and no chalitza either. Says the Gemara, Ela midrabanan. The truth is, this whole halacha that there's no Yibum when there's a zika from 2 brothers, it's all a gzeira midrabanan. And what's the reason for this gzeira? So the pasuk, in other words, the pasuk the Mishnah brings is an asmachta. That b'chlal, this whole possibility for there to be a zikah from 2 brothers is only possible with Rabbanan. Minat Torah, It's clear. Either she's a brother, either she's married to the first brother or she's married to the second brother. Midrabanan, there's a marriage, there's a partial marriage. So this whole thing is only shaykh midrabanan. So the whole thing is a gzeira midrabanan. Now what's the reason for this gzeira? Gzeira shema yaimru, because people might say, Beis Yevamos habois mi bayis echad. That two Yevamos that are coming from the same brother, misyabmois, that you do yibum for two wives from the same brother. That's the mistake that people might make. Why will people make this mistake? People will say, look, he already did maimah for her, and now he has two wives, and what are you doing? You're doing yibum for both of these wives. What's the truth? Minat Torah, that maimah didn't take effect at all. One of them is the wife of the first brother, and the second one is the wife of the second brother. But it looks to people like these are two wives from the same brother. So therefore, Chacham will geyser that you can't do yibum for this wife that looks like she's also a wife of the second brother. Frek the Gemara, but if that's your problem, this mistake people will make, so why can't you do yibum for one of them, and and then you do chalitza for the other one? So one of them that you're doing yibum is for sure the yibum is okay, and now the other one, you're afraid that people will make a mistake that you do yibum for two and that you're not allowed, so you'll do chalitza for the other one. Says the Gemara now that we also don't want people to say that gzeira, because then people will come and say shema yoimru bayis echad, when you have two yevamos that come from one brother, miktsasei banoi or miktsasei chalutz. So part of his wives, one wife you have to do yibum for, and another wife you have to do chalitza for. People will say that even if there's two Yevamos, you can't just let the other Yevama go free when one does Yibum. You have to do Yibum for one and Chalitza for the other. And we don't want people to make this mistake. Frek the Gemara, what's so terrible if people say such a thing? V'yaimru. Let people say that you do Yibum for one and you do Chalitza for the other. What's so bad about that mistake? If people will make that mistake and do Chalitza when the Chalitza is not necessary, so it's tam, it's garnished. I mean, you're just spitting at someone's shoe. What's the problem if people will say that? Says the Gemara, if he would do yibum for one wife first, and then he does chalitza for the second one, hachanami. You're right that it's not a big deal. Ella, what are we afraid of? What we're afraid is that maybe for one wife you'll first do chalitza, and once you do chalitza for her, and now and then you're going to go and do yibum for the second one, because you'll make a mistake to think that you do chalitza for one and yibum for the other. But now, once you do yibum for the other, you're being over on a lav. V'kamlei bi'isha le'yibana. And now you're being over on a lav that after you do chalitza for the other wife of your brother, le'yibana, you're not allowed to do a yibum for her. V'rachmana ama, kivin shale'ibana, shuv le'yivna. Once you do chalitza, you're not allowed to do yibum anymore for any of the wives of his. And so that's what we're afraid of, that over here in this case, when this brother did maimer for the wife from the previous brother, and now it looks like that they're both his wives, we're not going to say do yibum for one and do chalitza for the other. People might say that you can do that always, do yibum for one and chalitza, or chalitza first for one, and then yibum for the other, and you'll be over on this lav of lo yibana. Zog the Gemara, Omar of Nosan get lemamore. So over here, regarding this case that the Mishnah spoke about, when you gave the maimer for that wife that was previously your brother's wife. So now you gave her maimer. Well, you gave her a get actually. The one that you did maimer for, you went and gave her a get. Okay, so this brother, in other words, the second brother that passed away, before he passed away, he gave her a get. So now what happens? Hutra tzarasa. So the tzara will be allowed to do yibum for her. Aval hi asura. But this one that you gave a get for, she will still be aser. Why will she still be aser? The mechlefe bebalas get, because she could be confused with balas get. What does it mean that she could be confused with balas get? So Rashi explains as follows: that there's a Mishnah later, there's a Gemara later, that once you give a get for a woman that was a Yevama, even though there's no such a thing of giving a get for a Yevama. What do you do for a Yevama? You have to give her chalitza. But nevertheless, once you give a get, Chachama will geyser, just like when you do chalitza, you can't go ahead and marry her anymore. That's the pasuk we just brought, lo yibana. Similar, when you give a get, you're not supposed to go and marry her anymore. Because Chachama will geyser, people might think that if I give her a get, I could still marry her and do yibum. People might make the mistake and say that even after you give chalitza, you can still marry her. So that's the balas get that the Gemara is talking about. What does the Gemara mean with michlaf of a balas get? So Rashi explains an interesting thing. When you give a get for a yevameh, so the person can give the get with two different kavanas. Either he's giving the get to cut off the zika, and that get doesn't take effect. But when you give a get because you want to cut off the zikah, that's when Chachamim were geyser that you can't go and marry her anymore. Over here we're talking about, he's not giving the get to cut off the zikah, he's giving the get to cut off just the maimer. This marriage with the Rabbanon that he did, he wants to give a get to get rid of this maimer with the Rabbanon. Now the Yevamos is, the get that he gives does cut off this maimer, this kedushin with the Rabbanon. And there's no reason why the lav of lo yibana, why there should be a gzeira for the lav of lo yibana. Because the lav of lo yibana only applies when a person gives a get to cut off the chalitza, to cut off the zikah, that is. Then we're afraid that people might confuse chalitza with a get. But over here, when you give the get for the maimer, so over here, there was the maimer that was done, and now we gave her a get, it undid that maimer, so now she's not his wife anymore, b'chlal, and who is she? She's really the wife of the previous brother. You should be able to do yibum for that, even for this one as well. But on this, Rava is saying that still she's asa because michlafa b'balas get. Just like any time you give a get to cut off the zikah, over there Chachamim were geyser that you shouldn't be able to marry her anymore. Over here as well, when you're giving the get just to cut off this maimer, we're also concerned that it will be confused with that case, and therefore you can't marry her. But the other wife of yours is up for yibum now. That's not a problem. That's the first version of what Rava said. Another version holds that we're not geyser this. Ikeda amri Omar Rava said nosan get lemamore. A person that gives a get to this wife that he did maimer for. So hutra, so now it's mutter to do yibum, not only for the other, for the tzara, but afila he. Afila even for this one that you gave the get for, you could also do you also could do yibum for her. My timer, my the ovid ba shakle, whatever he did with her, which is the maimer that you did, now you remove that maimer by giving her a get. So now once the maimer is removed, so who is she? She is the Yevamos of the previous brother. She has nothing to do with you anymore. And therefore, you can go and do Yibum for her as well. So in other words, the second version of Rava is not geyser that you'll come and confuse this case with the case when you give a get for a zikah. Over here, you're giving the get for the maimer. You undid the maimer, so she's back. She has nothing to do with you anymore, so you can do Yibum. Two brothers that are married to two sisters. Umeis echad mehen. One of the brothers died. So at this point, when one brother dies, the other brother can't do yibum. It's a chayis ishtay. It's his wife's brother, or it's his wife's sister rather. But now the wife of the second brother passes away. So the issa to marry your wife's sister is only when your wife is alive. But now she passed away, so now there's a heter. L'chayri you could do yibum. Nevertheless, hareizu asura olavei lamis. Once, at the moment when the mitzvah of Yibum began, she was an erva for this brother. So that issa remains forever. Since for one moment, when the Yibum began, there was an issa, even though now your wife passed away and she is mutter to you, the issa remains forever. So this is a sugya that we had before on the Gemara and the Mishnah on Daf Lamed, and the Gemara is actually going to ask over here, why do we need this case if we had this exact same halacha in a Mishnah before? Frek the Gemara, Pshita, what it says in this Mishnah here is obvious. Why? Hashta now, or ma hasam, in the Mishnah that we had before on Daf Lamed. What was the Mishnah talking about over there? There, it was talking about actually three brothers. Three brothers, and two of them were married to sisters, and the third one was married to an unrelated wife. And one of the brothers that was married to a sister passes away. What happens? So now, the brother that's married to a sister can't do Yibum. The brother that's married to an unrelated wife could do Yibum. And then what happened? The brother that was married to the unrelated wife did Yibum, and then he passes away. But before he passes away, the other brother that was married to a sister, his wife passes away. So now you could do Yibum. That brother that previously was not able to do Yibum, now his wife passed away and he could do Yibum. What does the Gemara there say? The same exact halacha. Because the first time this woman fell for Yibum, you were still married to her sister, you couldn't do Yibum. Even though now, when she fell for Yibum for a second time, you already, the wife that was a sister died, you still can't do Yibum. So it's the same exact halacha that it said over there. And the Gemara actually says that it's a kal v'chomer. Uma hasam, if in the case of the previous Mishnah, so we're talking about that there were two brothers available to do Yibum. One of them can't because he's married to his sister, but the other one could. The other one is married to a nochris. So if over there in that case, when there was an isser to do Yibum for the brother that's married to a sister, But this Yevama is not completely pushed off of Yibum. There's another brother that still could do the Yibum. Nevertheless, Amrit, over there you say, Loi, that Isser that remains in the beginning never gets removed, even though the mitzvah of Yibum in the beginning, you were able to fulfill it with one brother. But since I can't fulfill it with another brother that's married to a sister, even if later that sister dies, it never changes. The Isser remains in place. Over here in this Mishnah, there's only two brothers. There's only one brother that could do Yibum, and he was married to a sister. The Kamitche Mahai Beisa Legamri. So at the time when she fell for Yibum, so the whole mitzvah of Yibum did not apply at all. The whole mitzvah of Yevama Yava Yaleh was off. For sure, like Kol Shekain, for sure, we would say that even if it became a heter later, because his wife died, it's still, the Issa should remain in place. So this is much less of a chiddush over here. So why do we have to have this Mishnah over here? Says the Gemara, you're right. The Gemara gives a similar answer to what it said in the previous Gemara. So the Tana of these Mishnayos, Ha Tana Bereisha. First, he really taught the halacha of our Mishnah. In a case where there was no mitzvah of Yibum at all originally, and therefore later, even when seemingly a heter would come, it remains asa forever. So that was the one that he said first. And v'hach chazia le'atera, the previous Mishnah, where it's a case where there were two brothers, and for one you can't do Yibum, and for the other you could do Yibum, over here it seemed to him that would be mutter. If the heter comes later that the sister dies, so now maybe it should be mutter. And v'sharya, so that he held is mutter. Or the Bachas Geiris over here, v'shayra, he left it out, he didn't teach that, he held it's mutter. But then and then he changed his mind and he came to the conclusion that even that case would be Asr as well. And that's a bigger chiddush, even though the Isser in the beginning was not a full Isser. But nevertheless, the Isser for that brother that couldn't do Yibum remains forever. Because that's a much bigger chiddush, so it's more beloved to him, that halacha. So therefore he taught that Mishnah first. And now this second Mishnah right over here, that's the smaller chiddush that was taught first, remained in its place, and therefore we have these two Mishnayos. Talk to Gemara. The Gemara here begins a new inyan now. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braise, Ba Aleha. So if he went ahead and did do Yibum with this this sister over here, Chayev Aleha Mishum Eishesach. Okay, so what are we talking about? Again, the Mishnah. It's going back in the case of the Mishnah that you have two brothers married to two sisters, and one brother passes away, and he's not allowed to do Yibum because it's his wife's sister. What happens if he did go ahead and do Yibum for her? So the Tanakama says he's going to be chayiv twice. One is from Shem Eishes Ach, that it's his brother's wife, right? Because the whole mitzvah of Yibum takes off the Isser of Eishes Ach. But over here, if there's no mitzvah of Yibum, so the first Isser is that it's your brother's wife. And also Mishum Achais Isha. But also it's going to be chayiv for the fact that you married someone which is your wife's sister. So there's two lavim, two karbanas chatas that will be chayiv. Divrei Rabbi Yosi. Rab Shimon says, "En chayiv ela mishum eishes ach bolvat," that you will only be chayiv one. You'll only be chayiv for eishes ach, not for achais ishtay. The Gemara will explain why not. But first the Gemara brings the contradiction here. Frek the Gemara, but what Tanya, and another Braise, Rab Shimon also says Yechayev only for one, but there he said, Rab Shimon Oime, Ein Yechayev elim shum achos isha bolvat. You only chayev for the Issa that it's your wife's sister, not for the fact that it's your brother's wife. So which is the one that you only chayev for? Says the Gemara, Loi Kashya. This is not a contradiction. Now the basis of the Gemara's answer over here is, the basis of Rab Shimon's opinion is, Ein Isser Chal al Isser. If you have one woman that you're having a relation with her that's Asser, so then if there's one Isser that was already Chal, so then the second Isser does not take effect. So the two Braises of Rab Shimon, it depends which Isser was Chal first. So the Gemara explains. Like Kashi, it's not a question. Kan Shenosa Chai. In the case where he says that you only chayiv for the fact that it's achos ishtoi, that it's your wife's sister, that's because the one that's alive, that's married to the sister, he married the sister first. So right away when he married the sister, that was the first issa that was chal. That her sister is a sister, you can't marry her. And then the other brother that died, he married this sister. So the isser of Eishes Achiv, the fact that she's the brother's wife, that came afterwards. So therefore, the Isser of Eishes Achiv is not Chal on the Isser that came first, which is Achais Ishtay. And then kan shenasa meis. In the brisa that it says that the only issa yechayev for is the fact that it's your brother's wife, eshes achiv, is shenasa meis. That's what happened first. The brother is the one that married this wife first. And v'achakach nasa chay. And only afterwards did you marry a sister, and so therefore the achais ishta is the second issa, so it does not take effect. That's the basis of Rab Shimon's opinion. Fragt die Gemara, v'Rab Shimon, heiche de nasa meis, v'achakach nasa chay. Kivin the Isra Chais Isha Lechal Tisyabim Yevumi. If you're telling me that Rab Shimon holds of this concept of Ein Issa Chalal Isser, so if so, according to Rab Shimon, in the case where your brother is the one that married his wife first, right? So at first became Eishes Achiv, and only afterwards Nasachai, then only afterwards you married a sister. Only afterwards the Isra of Achais Isha would be Chal, but it can't be Chal. So given the Isra Achais Isha Lechayel, so now that the Isra of Achais Isha will not take effect, so then if so, what's the only issue with this woman? That it's your brother's wife. But if it's your brother's wife and there's no other erva that could take effect, so then Tisyabim Yevumi, let her go ahead and do Yibum. In a case where the only erva is a Eishes Achiv, so then there's the mitzvah of Yibum. What's holding back the mitzvah of Yibum? Because there's another erva of this being your wife's sister. But we're saying that if that's the Issa that came second, that Issa does not take effect, so there's no Issa of Achais Ishtoi over here. So it's a classical case of Yibum where it's just Eishes Achiv. Amar Rav Ashi, so Rav Ashi answers, no, it's not so pashut. Isser Achais Isha mitletoi. This Isser, this additional erva here, the fact that it's your wife's sister, it's sort of hanging in the mid in air. It's up in the air. And ipaka Isser Eishes Ach, the moment you're going to remove the Isser of Eishes Ach, asi Isser Achais Isha v'chayil. The Isser of Achais Isha will come and take effect. So v'hilkach leipaka. Therefore, we can't remove that Isser. So the point the Gemara is saying is, what are you going to say? That really it's only a Isser of being Eishes Achiv. And therefore, let's remove that Isser and allow the mitzvah of Yibum. The moment you remove that Isser, what happens? Now the Isser of Achais Isha comes into effect. The moment that the Isser of Achais Isha comes into effect, there's no mitzvah of Yibum. If there's no mitzvah of Yibum, then we go back that the original Isser of it being Eishes Achiv should be here, because there's no mitzvah of Yibum in this case. So therefore, in such a case, Rab Shimon holds that the Isser of Eishes Achiv remains in effect, because we can't remove that Isser for the mitzvah of Yibum. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Frag the Gemara, V'sava Rabbi Yossi. Does Rabbi Yossi taka hold that Isser Chalal Isser? That one Isser could take effect in another Isser? That's what it seems like, right? Rabbi Yossi said, when you have the two Isurim, so you're going to be chayav for both of them. But for Hatanya, we learned in the Braisa as follows. Over Aveda sheyesh bo shtei mises. If a person was over one Aveda and there are two different mises, that he would be chayav for them. Nidin b'chamura, so which one do we give him? We give him the most stringent one. That's Tanakama. Rabbi Yossi says, Nidin b'zika harishayna. We give him the first misa that came upon him. The word zika over here means the first one that came upon him. Okay, haba olav. V'tanya, now we learned in the Braisa regarding Rabbi Yossi's opinion that says that when a person is chayiv two mises, you always give him the first one that he became chayiv for. Keitzad Amar Rabbi Yossi nidin bezika rishayna ba'alav. What is the case that Rabbi Yossi says that he gets the first misa that comes upon him? So an example is when you have a isser of arayis chamaisai. If a person has a mother-in-law, so a mother-in-law there's a isser misa which is more chomer. I believe the Isra of Chamaisa Yarashi says is sreifa. That's more of a chomer de gemisa. And then the Nasa says shesish. So first, she was an almana. His mother-in-law was an almana. So it's just the Isra of the fact that she's his mother-in-law. But then she got remarried, and now she's an Eishesish. And now for the Isra of Eishesish, there's also a Chiv Misa, but it's lighter. It's Isra Misa of only Chenek. So what's the halacha? Nidin b'chamaisa. If he has a relation with her, so then he gets punished with the more stringent issa, which is chamaisai. Eishes ish. Nidin b'chamaisa. So in such a case, because she was first chamaisai, that's the first issa that was chal, that it's chamaisai. So therefore, she's nidin b'chamaisai. But not with the issa. She doesn't get. He does not get the punishment of the fact that it's eishes ish. If it's the reverse. Eishes ish v'nasis chamaisa. If first this was a woman that was married, and only afterwards she became your mother-in-law. So the first issa that was shaykh to you is the fact that she was a eishes ish, and the second issa that came about is chamaisai. So then again, so you go to what was first, nidin be'eishes ish. You only get a punishment for the fact that she's an eishes ish, and not with the issa of chamaisai. So what do you see over here? Even according to Rabbi Yossi, you always give the punishment for what was first. And that includes even if Eishes Ish is the one that was first, even though it's the lighter Misa. It's only the Misa of Chenek. But once that was the one that was first, Ein Issa Chalalissa. You can't give the punishment anymore of Chamaisai. So how could Rabbi Yossi over here say that you say Issa Chalalissa? Rabbi Avo answers, Maid Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi will agree in our case that over here that you could say Issa Chalalissa. Why? Be'isser Maisif. Because when you have an Isser that is Maisif, a new aspect of an Isser, over here you do say Issa Chalalissa. What's the case of Isser Maisif? So Rashi explains, Isser Maisif over here is when you have the Isser of Eishes Ach. So the Isser of Eishes Ach, if that came first, again, it's the other way around. The Isser of Achais Ishtai. If what happened is that for you, first this was your wife's sister. So now, when it's your wife's sister, it's only Asa to you. It's only your wife's sister. It's not Asa to any of the other brothers. What happens now when a brother goes ahead and marries her sister? So now this is Eishes Achiv. So now there's an Isser that's added for all the other brothers. Not only you can't marry this woman because it's your wife's sister. Now none of the brothers could marry this wife because for all the brothers, it's their brother's wife. So again, the Isser of Eishes Achiv is Maisif, a Isser for all the brothers, more than the Isser of Achais Isha, which was just the Isser for you, because that was your wife's brother. That's the concept of Isser Maisif. So again, to clarify, Rashi explains, the concept of Isser Maisif is that when you add the second Isser, it's Maisif, a Isser for other people that were not Isser in this Isser before. So that's what happens over here. Gemara, okay, you're right, there is a Issa Maisif, and therefore you could say Issa Chalal Issa. But Tainach, this is true, in a case where you say that the brother that's alive, so he's the one that married his wife first, so for him, it was a Isser of Achais Ishtay. So it was only Asa for him. And then and then the other brother married the sister, and now the new Isser that comes is Eishes Achiv. So in such a case I say, Migud itaisif Isser legabe achim, because you're adding a Isser to other people, to the brothers, that it was not Isser for them until now. So even though usually one Isser cannot take effect on another Isser, but because the new Isser is adding an Isser for other people, so itaisif Isser legabe didei. So the new Isser takes effect for you as well, even though for you it was already also before. So that makes sense. Now we can understand this is what's called Isser Maisif. Hello, but if the case wasn't the reverse, if first the brother that died, he's the one that married his wife first. So now, once he married his wife first, that asked for all the brothers to marry her. For all of them, they were already all asa. And now the Chai, the one that's alive, comes and marries her sister. So there's no, you're not being Maisif any new Isser for any of the other brothers. It's already also for all the brothers. My Isser Maisif Ikke. How are you being Maisif any new Isser over here for any of the other brothers? Right away it was also for all the brothers. So this question is, in such a case, how could you say Isser Chal al Isser according to Rabbi Yossi? Now if you'll argue and say that now, even though you're not adding a new Isser for all the other brothers, but nevertheless what happens over here is for this person himself, when he marries the sister of this wife, of the brother that, again, the mace first married his wife, and now the living brother went and married his sister. So what happens for him? He now becomes Aser to more sisters. Migu de itzer bekulo achvase. He now becomes Aser to all of the sisters of his wife. Right? Okay, so this is different than the concept of Isser Maisif. Isser Maisif, which the Gemara said before, means there were people that were not yet Aser to this woman, and you're being Maisif or Isser to more people, to all the other brothers. Now the Gemara will call this Isser Kailal. Isser Kailal over here means that you're not being Maisif for Isser to new people, but you're being Maisif for Isser on other sisters. There's additional sisters that are becoming Aser. Right? Because until now, who are you Aser to? Only to your brother's wife, because of Eishes Achim. The moment you marry her sister, now you're not only asa to your brother's wife, now you're going to be asa to all of the sisters. So Zakta Gemara, Hai Issa Kailulhu. That's not called Issa Maisif. You're not adding an Issa to any new people, but rather you're including more women into this Issa. That's called Issa Kailul. So Rabbi Yosi does not hold of Issa Kailul. So therefore, in such a case, how would Rabbi Yosi say Issa Chalal Issa? If you look in Rashi, Rashi crystallizes this difference between Issa Maisif and Issa Kailul. Issa Maisif means you're adding a new Issa for people that it wasn't Asa to them until now. Issa Kailul means this Isser, you're not adding any new Isser for the people that it was Asa to them till now. But you're adding other people that were not Asa till now. Over here, we're talking about other sisters. Other sisters that were not Asa till now. Huh? No. But you're not, again, the people that they're Asa to, you're not adding. All the brothers were already Asa to this one sister that we're talking about, because she was already married to one of the brothers. So it's already Eishes Achiv. So we're not adding, for this woman, we're not adding any more people to be Asa to her. But we're adding more sisters. The Mashal Rashi brings is, let's say you have a Chaticha of Chelev. You have one Chaticha. Issa Maisif would be, that Chaticha of Chelev would be Asa to one person, and now this Issa Maisif would be that it would become Asa to 5 people. That's Issa Maisif. Issa Kailul would be, that not only is one piece of Chelev Aser, you're being Kailul with this piece, another 5 pieces of Chelev that are going to become Aser because of this new Isser. So you're not adding more people, you're adding more pieces that are becoming Aser. That's Issa Kailul. Yeah, you're adding more Isurim, exactly. That's Issa Kailul. But Rabbi Yosi does not hold of Issa Kailul. Says the Gemara, so you're right. It's not Mamish, the Isser is not going to be Chal. And really, when Rabbi Yosi before said you're going to be chayiv for both, you're not really chayiv for both. Ela marove, so Rava says, Maila ni olav, ki'ilu asa shtayim. That what it's saying is that I consider it as if he was over on both of them, as if he did both of the Yisurim. But ve'ena chayiv alachas. But really, he's only going to be chayiv one. Mitzad the fact that I say that ein isachal alisser, he's only going to be chayiv one. But nevertheless, I do consider it as if he was over shtayim. And the Gemara is going to explain what that means. The Chenki Yasser Rav and Rav Yechanan, Rav said in the name of Rav Yechanan the same thing. Mailani olav ki'ilu asa beis. We consider it as if he was over on both of the Isurim, but ve'ena chayiv alachas. But Papayel, because one Issa can't be chal on the other, so therefore he's only going to be chayiv one. Now, my nafkimina. What does this mean that it says if he did both? So the nafkamina means lekavrei bein rishoyim gemurim. When it comes to the halacha of kvura, so Rashi brings that a rasha that was chayiv misa, you're not allowed to bury him in the Beis HaKvaris together with everybody else. He has to be buried in a special place. Not only that, even a rasha that's buried in a special place in the Beis HaKvaris, it depends which chiyav misa the person gets. If he gets a chiyav of hereg or chenek, he belongs in one section of the Beis HaKvaris. If he gets a chiyav of sereifa or skila, he belongs in an even lower section of the Beis HaKvaris. So over here, what he's saying is that it's as if he was over on both his surim, and you're going to have to bury him in a place of Rishayim Gemurim. Even though B'payol, he only gets the other Chiyav Misa, because you say, Ein Issa Chalal Issa, but it's as if he did both his surim, and he's buried with Rishayim Gemurim. Okay. Yeah, sort of, yeah. So the Gemara now says, this continuation of the Gemara, we're only going to begin it today because the Hemshech is the next Amud, but the next Sugya is going to be about this concept of Isser Kailo. That we just said that when you have an Isser, when you're adding a second Isser, and the second Isser is not asering this on more people, you're just including more Isurim. That's called Isser Kailo. The Gemara says, this is a machlaikis between the following Tanoim or Amirayim. The Itmer, so we learned, and here the Gemara is going to bring a bunch of cases. And in the next Amud, tomorrow, we'll learn about how this is Issa Kaila. So the first case is, Itma we learned, Zar Sheshimish B'Shabbos. A Zar, he's not a Kayin, he does the Aveda in the Beis HaMikdash and Shabbos. Rab Chia says, Chayiv Shtayim. You Chayiv twice. Number one, he's a Zar, he's not allowed to do the Aveda. And number two, he was Mechal Shabbos. He's not allowed to do the Aveda on Shabbos. Rab Chia says, Bakapara says, En Chayiv Alachas. In such a case, you only chayiv once. Gemara says, Kafetz Rab Chia jumped up and he said, V'nishba, and he swore, Ho Aveda, in the name of the Aveda in the Beis HaMikdash. It's a lashon of a shvua. Kach shemaiti mi Rebbe. I heard from Rebbe, from Rabbeinu HaKadosh, that in such a case, a zar that serves in the Beis HaMikdash on Shabbos is chayiv twice, shtayim. Kavetz bar kapara, and bar kapara jumped up. V'nishba, and he swore ha'aveda in the name of the Aveda in the Beis Hamikdash. Kach shemaita mi Rebbe achas. I heard in the name of Rebbe that you only chayiv once. That's their machlekes. And the Gemara here starts and explains what they discussed. Hischel Rebbe Reb Chia Lod. Reb Chia started to discuss this, and he said as follows: Shabbos lakoil nesra. Shabbos is also for everybody to do any malacha. Kesha hutra, when there was a heta to do the malacha, the mikdash in the Beis Hamikdash, when you could do the aveda. So for who is it a heta? It's l'kayanim hutra. It's only a heta for the kainim. So l'kayanim hutra v'loy l'zarim. It's a heta only for the kainim and not for anybody else. So if so, when you have a zar that does the aveda in the Beis Hamikdash on Shabbos, yesh kamishum zaris v'yesh kamishum Shabbos. There's a issur for the fact that he's a zar and he's not allowed to do the aveda, and there's also a issur for the fact that this is Shabbos. That's why you chayiv twice. That's what Reb Chia said. Hischel bakapara lodem. Bakapara started discussing this, and he said, Shabbos lakoil nesra. Shabbos is also for everybody to do any malacha. Kesha hutra b'migdash hutra. In the Beis Hamikdash, the aveda on Shabbos is mutter. You're allowed to do the malacha. You're allowed to do the aveda. So therefore, that's not an isser. Ein kan el zarus. The only isser is the isser that is a zar. So therefore, there's only one isser and not two. Like as I said, the Gemara will later explain that they're arguing about isser kailul, whether you could have one isser chala and another isser. Okay, but this is the lashon and the discussion that they had. Another case, similar discussion. Balmum sheshimish betuma. A balmum which is not allowed to do the aveda. So he's a balmum, and he did the aveda when he's tameh. Chia says he's chayiv twice. Bakapara says he's chayiv only once. Again, the same thing happens. Kavetz Reb Chia v'nishba. Reb Chia swores ha'aveda. Kach shemaita mi Rebbe shtayim, that he's chayiv twice. Kavetz bakapara v'nishba ha'aveda. Kach shemaita mi Rebbe achas. You only chayiv once. So again, Hischel Reb Chia lodun. Reb Chia starts discussing this. Tumah lakoil nesra. Tumah is a issa for everybody to go and do the Aveda in the Beis Hamikdash. Kesha hutra b'mikdash. Now there is a heta to do the Aveda in the Beis Hamikdash b'tumah, and that's when Reiv of the Tzibur is tamei for a Korban Pesach, for a Korban Tzibur. So then tumah hutra b'tzibur. So when you have that heter, it's a kainim trimimim hutra. For who is the heter? The heter is for a kain that's a tamim that has no mum, and he's allowed to do the Aveda. So l'kainim trimimim hutra v'le bali mumin. For a bal mum, there's no such a heter. So yesh kam mishum bali mumim v'yesh kam mishum tumah. So if so, there's two isurim here. There's the fact that he's a bal mum, and there's the fact that he's also tameh. So you chayiv twice. Hischel bakapara lot, and bakapara starts discussing this, and he says tumah lakoil nesra. It's also to do the aveda when you're tameh. But keshehutra, when there's a heta to do it, when there's a tzibur that's tameh, b'migdash hutra in the Beis Hamikdash, it's mutter for everybody. So therefore, en kan ela mishum bal mum. The only issa that there is for this person that did Aveda b'tumah is not the Aveda of tumah. It's only the fact that he's a Baal Mum. The third case, another similar halacha, Zar she'achal melike, or meluka, the Gersa is a zar that eats from a bird that was not shechted, but you do melike, which is with the fingernail. So there's no proper shechita for this. So, and he's a zar, he's not a kayin. Reb Chia says, chayiv shtayim, he'll be chayiv twice. Bar kapara and chayiv alachas. Bar kapara says you only chayiv once. So again, kavetz Reb Chia v'nishba ha'aveda kach shemaita mi Rebbe shtayim. I heard that you chayiv twice. Kavetz bar kapara v'nishba. Bar kapara jumped up and said, ha'aveda kach shemaita mi Rebbe achas. That you chayiv once. Here's Reb Chia lodon. Reb Chia started discussing this, and he said, nevela lakoil nesra. The issur of nevela, which is what it is, if not for the fact that the Torah allows this, there's no proper shechita here. So there's nevela. This is also for everybody. Kesha hutra b'mikdash, when it was allowed in the Beis Hamikdash, it's a kainim hutra. For the kainim that do malika, for them, they can eat from this, from the kachim. So l'kayanim hutra v'loy l'zarim. So it's a heter only for kayanim and not for a zar. So if so, yesh ka mishum zarus. There is the issa that a zar is eating kachim. That's always the issa. A zar is not allowed to eat kachim. And also yesh ka mishum malika. And then there's a issa, the fact that there's malika. So therefore there's a issa of a nevela. Two isurim. Hischel bakapara ladon. Bakapara started discussing this, and he said, nevela lakoil nesra. Nevela is also for everybody. When the heter was made in the Beis Hamikdash, so hutra. Now in the Beis Hamikdash, there's no issa of this being a nevela. So ein kanela mishum zaros. The only issa that there is over here is that this is a zar that's eating kachim in the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, that's only one issa. It's not two.